Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blockchain Rock. We're here with Anthony Provasoli. Hey, Anthony.
Hey,
How's it going?
very good, very good.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for
So,
having me.
given that it's the first episode of Blockchain Rock, let's give a brief introduction as to what this project is. So, the idea is to share knowledge, content regarding the financial technology space. There is a lot of businesses operating within the space, some with license, some working toward the license here in Gibraltar, and we just thought that it would be worth sharing it with the communities online. So we will start on LinkedIn, on YouTube, for the video part of the project. Then we would take the audio and we will just put it, for example, on Spotify and iTunes, as I told you. So first, I'd like to know what you think about the project. Being a person that, of course, work within the industry as a stakeholder, you're a Fintech Lawyer, Tier 1 under Chamber and Partners. And you've been really operating in this space and providing legal services and legal support since the very beginning, since the very dawn of this industry. So you went through the beginning of the hype, no, to its height, to the crypto winter, and then eventually now where it seems, I would say, that the interest is picking up again and there is more confidence in the market. But we will address sort of that as we discussed later on. So what do you think about the project? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea actually, and something that would do well to sort of showcase a little bit about Gibraltar, what we're trying to do in the crypto industry, in the blockchain industry, and also it showcases some of the players who are around here, some of the stakeholders, as you put it. Of course, we advise many of these companies who have now relocated to Gibraltar. Some of them, are startups. Some of them are more established firms.
Can you mention a few of those or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to mention some of our clients, which is public knowledge, so such as CEX.io, eToro, Token Market. These are companies which are more high profile and who have been around for a longer period of time. More established players in the industry, but also we've been working with some exciting, startups such as Covesting, Modex, Colu, and we're very excited to be involved so closely in this space. But yeah, I think this project is a great project. I hope to see it flourish over the next few years, and well done, and good luck. I hope to feature on it more than just this once.
And we hope
Yeah,
to have you
excited
here
to see.
more than once, way more than once. So, as we mentioned, you provide, you're a fintech lawyer. You provide legal services, and as I said during the introduction, you've been operating in this space for quite some time now. So I would like to hear out from you about the industry, how it developed, how did it all start, the period during the hype and the height of, for example, Bitcoin, then about the crypto winter, and about the industry now. I know you've recently been in New York for Consensus,
Yeah.
which is, I'd say, the biggest, no? It's the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest conferences, crypto related conferences or blockchain related conferences in the world, and I find it very useful. Different. I always say this to because a lot of people ask, how did you find the conference? I think for different players in the industry, so for example, for the tech guys, for the developers, perhaps Consensus is not that brilliant, but there are many satellite events where you can get a lot more deep dive into the actual technology and the
I see.
developer side, which maybe stimulates more some players, some people. But for us as legal advisors, it's Consensus is really a very I think it's one of the best conferences in the year.
And what's the difference between consensus today or this type of event for legal advisors or stakeholder involving the industry from a perspective different than the technical, perhaps developing side of the industry? What differences have you noticed across these periods, these three periods, the beginning,
Yeah.
the hype, the winter, and how do you find the industry is today?
Sure. So I started getting involved in this space around 2014,
Okay.
and at the time it was a very different landscape. There was no regulation anywhere. There were most of these companies, all of the companies in who were involved with blockchain or cryptocurrencies were very new companies, very young companies. They were operating largely in a grey space in terms of regulatory environment and legal implications. A lot of them suffered the consequences of doing that. Simply because they were naive, but also because through no fault of their own, there was no guidance, there was no legal framework that could guide them in any way. So I think what the landscape was back then, there was a lot of startups, like I said, there was a lot of people looking for a place to set up, a jurisdiction where they could go and operate their legitimate businesses, get bank accounts, simple services like professional service, fiduciary service, incorporate a company, this sort of stuff that we sort of take for granted.
And how, if I can interrupt you a moment, how were they perceived by, for example, the banking system in 2014? So this is before Bitcoin, the Bitcoin hype moment, before all of the fraud, before not even fraud, as we will discuss later. Many businesses in 2017 failed simply because the business did not work and it wasn't necessarily a fraud. But in 2014, many people never heard of Bitcoin. So how could this stakeholder provide services at all without the support of banks? And how did banks, for example, another credit institution, viewed businesses that intended to delve into technology and adopt, crypto assets and other financial technology, let's say?
Very negatively. So at the time, Bitcoin, which was really the only coin around at the time, was viewed as a tool for money launderers, criminals, and the Silk Road scandal didn't do any favors to any of these companies that were trying to provide services in this area, and naturally the banks, people who, the service providers, accountants, most of them didn't know about this. Even lawyers, a lot of lawyers, law firms in Gibraltar, for example, when I first started to get involved in this, there was nobody I could speak to about it. There was, I would go around the firms asking people, have you heard about this? And
why the interest? How did you come across it first?
I came across it because we were approached by a client that was interested in setting up an exchange, and and that's that's what sparked my interest. I then started to look into it, and as happens in this industry very regularly, as soon as you start reading up on it, you just start to get drawn in, and as they say, the rest is history. You just get completely immersed in wanting to learn more about it, and find more use cases for it. So but the landscape has evolved a lot. So from those early days, there's much more widespread adoption now, especially in Gibraltar. I mean, Gibraltar, what they've done with the DLT regulations and how they've educated the jurisdiction as a whole, the professional industry as a whole, it's amazing. I mean, you can't talk to anybody now that hasn't already heard of cryptocurrency or DLT. So certainly in Gibraltar, it's it's revolutionized. It's revolutionized Gibraltar in a big way, because now cryptocurrency is becoming, and blockchain is becoming a big industry here.
And also legitimate business, not necessarily something
Completely,
which people are.
completely legitimate business. I mean, so far, and long may that continue. We haven't seen any, any
Discrimination toward these forms.
let's
No?
call it scams. Scam is
Yeah.
is a popular word in this industry. But we haven't seen any sort of big scandals from the companies that we've allowed to come here and integrate into our community and apply for a distributed ledger technology provider's license. So hopefully this will just grow. The interest will just grow. There'll be more and more companies that are providing new services which are blockchain related, and
why,
which may fall within the scope of the DLT regulations, and I hope that we are able to continue to attract the top players, but also the right players. So we talk about the top players, and we talk about the already established high profile names, but actually there are a lot of exciting startups that have a great business model, great teams behind them, and just because they're small and just because they're not a big name doesn't mean that they're not welcome here.
So you mentioned the regulation, the coming out of the regulation in Gibraltar, and how that has guided businesses. Now, the regulation in Gibraltar came out, or at least came into force on the 1st of January 2018.
Yeah.
Correct. So, how has that affected businesses in Gibraltar that were operating in that space, and the interest in Gibraltar, or at least the DLT interest in Gibraltar? Have you noticed less volume? Have you noticed just a lack of general interest as compared to, for example, the previous period, 2017, all of that hype, a moment of hype surrounding Bitcoin and fintech? How was the experience for you?
Yeah, well, around the middle of 2017 was when government announced that the regulations were going to come into play, and they were going to be in force as from the 1st of January 2018. And when that announcement was made, that's when we started to get a lot of interest, from people inquiring about Gibraltar. What are these DLT regulations that we hear about? How do we apply for a license? What exactly does a license give us, etc., etc. So it was that's when we started to get a lot of interest. The first time round. Remember that part of the requirements under or one of the benefits to the first movers was that if you were already operational before the 1st of January 2018, that would give you sort of a transitional period or grandfathering period where you would be able to continue to provide services in Gibraltar, notwithstanding that you may fall within the scope of the DLT regulations, without actually having a license, provided that you applied for the license within the first 3 months of the regulations being in force.
Okay.
So obviously there was a rush to get in before the 1st of January. So there were a lot of people who had been already considered Gibraltar, or who had been talking to us and thinking about a potential move or potential application. And they were very keen at that time to get in before the 1st of January, because obviously that would give them the benefit of a 3-month period whereby they could start to operate.
Whereas at the same time,
continue to operate in the case of some people who were already around.
Whilst at the same time being able to say, we're operating from
at the same time being able to say to their consumers and to the world that they were in the process of applying for a DLT license, and that also that they were going to be probably one of the first to actually get a license.
Was that, sorry to interrupt you again. I'm just curious. So we said that the regulation came into force in 2018. In 2017, at the beginning, Bitcoin the value of Bitcoin skyrocketed, and then it rapidly went down, right? Yeah. And that coincided also with a lot of businesses, unregulated businesses, which fell through and they just went bankrupt. Some initial coin offering that turned out to be fraudulent, or so. In light of all of these circumstances, in light of these 2017s of up and downs, do you think what attracted businesses to come into a regulated environment was also the insurance that represented for potential investor, clients, and all of these stakeholders? Or was it simply to receive guidance, or maybe both? Like, what do you think?
What do I think drove people to
Yeah,
Gibraltar?
or better, I know, of course, that Gibraltar has been very successful in terms of the DLT regulation has been very successful, and it has attracted a lot of interest. It already the Gibraltar Financial Service Commission already started to provide some licenses. So I know it has been a story of success. Do you think part of this success is owed to those hectic times in 2017, or uh, do you think
Yeah, I
it was
mean,
just
a lot of these companies became very profitable during that period,
okay?
and also during that period there was a lot of many people doing ICOs, token offerings of sorts, and at the time it was a very popular way of raising funds and a very successful way of raising funds. So not all of the applicants, in fact, the majority aren't token offerings, but some of the DLT licensees now did their own token offerings during the period of 2017. When it was like I said, a very popular and effective way of raising funds. So of course it helped them because that was a time when the value was on the up. A lot of these companies then hedged, and liquidated, cashed out some of their crypto. Others preferred not to, but and then obviously suffered the consequences during the crypto winter. But most of our clients, at least the ones that we were working with, were did hedge and acted very wisely, by hedging their bets, if you like, and actually liquidating some of their crypto. But for sure, that period did make a lot of people a lot of money. Then obviously we had the crypto winter around the start of 2019, and well, even before that probably. And thankfully, and I guess this is where the DLT regulations play a big part, because anybody that is a DLT provider in Gibraltar and has a license in Gibraltar is required to have certain measures in place that protect firms against these sort of volatility swings. So thankfully, and in fact, probably all of the DLT licenses in Gibraltar have been able to endure the crypto winter, and actually, that's when you get to show that the measures that you've put in place to mitigate these risks actually work. So I know that most, if not all, of our clients have been able to endure the crypto winter in a very good way, and actually what seems to have happened during this crypto winter period is that a lot of people have started to develop or work on their products.
Okay.
Work on new projects, work on their products. And now that we're seeing sort of the value pick up again, people are starting to now launch these products. So now we're getting almost a second wave of inquiries, and I think it's, at least from Hassan's perspective, we're seeing a lot more inquiries again. Whereas during the crypto winter, things died down a little bit, which in a way worked very well for us because we had so much to do from the initial wave of inquiries.
So
But
it gave you
we
some
seem
breathing
to
space.
exactly, and also a lot of attention and focus needs to go into these applications. So it was good to get that sort of breathing place so we could focus on certain projects and certain clients. but we seem to be starting to get a lot of queries again. And it's also the quality of the queries, which we are very happy with, because it's a high quality of projects and teams that we're seeing, and that's exactly what we want.
And now, I'm very curious. I mean, I work in this space myself, so but I'd like to hear it from you. What are the some of the challenges, and what are some of the opportunities that come with working as a lawyer in the fintech space, in the fintech industry?
Well, the challenges are the how rapidly things evolve in this space, whether it's the tech, the methods of doing things. So, for example, where people were doing ICOs, people now are doing something called an IEO, which is really not much of a difference, except that you are issuing your tokens through an exchange. But you have to quickly sort of adapt how you advise on certain projects or on certain ways of doing things. So, for example, we were advising clients on how to structure their ICOs. What sort of legal implications they were exposed to. Whether it's KYC, AML, whether we're generally advising how to structure an ICO.
Yeah.
And then when the trend changes to an IEO, for example, that forces you to rethink the advice you were giving.
All of the advice, yeah.
Review the legislation again, certain regulations, and there are different pieces of legislation that apply here. So, you have to make sure that you keep evolving with the times and with how people are doing things. So the way people structure things changes so regularly and so quickly that you just need to keep up all the time. Also, it's there's so much information out there. My Twitter feed, for example, is just there's all sorts of articles, and it's difficult to keep up because there's so much happening in this space. It's there's so much happening in this space that it's
there is also so much noise, I guess.
A lot of noise, and you have to separate what's
To
real and
filter
what's
through,
not
yeah.
real.
Yeah.
What projects are real and which ones are fraudulent, which ones are there's a lot of
On this last point, I'm really interested. So, when a business comes to you, they will usually send you a white paper or a business plan.
Yeah.
How do you understand whether the business is one that is worth considering as a client? Because, of course, as you said, there is a large demand of there is a large volume of inquiries, but you can only accommodate a small number of those. So how do you go about evaluating the inquiries that you get? How does it work?
Well, it's a team effort, really, and it's difficult. It's difficult to determine which projects are going to be successful and which are not going to be successful. It's impossible, actually. All we can do is look at the project as a whole, look at the team behind it. I think that's very important to see what the experience of the team is, what the not just the experience, but what the expertise of the individuals behind it is, and generally whether it's something that's feasible. A lot of these projects are aiming for the moon, and that's not a bad thing, but it's sometimes you need to take a step back and see, well, actually, do we think this is achievable with the resources that they have in place? But it's a team effort, like I said. So I will consult not only internally with my colleagues, but also we will reach out to our network of contacts in this industry to get some feelers from them to see whether they think this is a project that has mileage, whether they think that the team is a good one. So these are the things that we typically look into.
I see. And what about, because we have not touched upon it yet, what about the opportunities for a legal professional to operate in this space? So we spoke about the challenges, or at least the main challenge, which consist of course, the struggle of keeping up with all of the information, with keeping up with trends, with keeping up with the legal advice that the client needs. So what about the opportunities? What can this space offer to a legal professional?
I don't think it offers something different than it offers legal professionals in other areas. Um, but it depends on the person. So for me, it gives me job satisfaction. It's something that I enjoy
Why?
because I enjoy the subject. I enjoy the subject matter. I get excited by the projects.
Okay.
So you mentioned before, how do you go through the process of filtering what's a good project, what's a bad project? I'm not the best person for that because for me all the projects are amazing. I get easily carried away with all of them. So I'm very excited by new developments, by new technology, by emerging markets. So
The community, no, must have
the
also
community is
the type
amazing
of,
as well. I've got so many what I would call friends now in the community, in the crypto community, the blockchain community, whatever you want to call it. And the community in Gibraltar is growing itself, in a big way. So it's exciting to see that. We spoke before about me being involved in the earlier days when not many people were talking about blockchain or crypto in Gibraltar, and to see how Gibraltar has evolved over the last 4 or 5 years, to a place where now in each and every conference that I speak at, when I mention Gibraltar, everybody knows about it. It's not, before
yeah.
I would, go to these conferences as a delegate, try to speak to as many people as I could, and nobody had ever heard of Gibraltar. Now, Gibraltar is prominent in this industry, and it's one of the
Yeah.
favorite jurisdictions for people to do business from. So it's exciting to see that. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Last question, I would say. What the future holds for you, what the future holds for Hassan, what the future holds for Gibraltar in, of course, relating to blockchain and fintech, and what do you think we will see happening in the next 5 years, let's say?
I mean, I don't know. Obviously, who knows what the future holds. But I see the fintech ecosystem in Gibraltar growing organically. I don't think we should try and grow it too quickly. But I think it is already growing organically, and it will continue to do so as more and more good projects migrate to Gibraltar, or at least set up part of their operations from Gibraltar. Obviously, the talent pool of employees in this sector will increase, and will get better in the same way as we saw for the e-gaming industry. I think a similar thing will happen with the fintech sector. And yeah, all we can hope for is that more and more quality projects decide that Gibraltar is an interesting place for them to consider, a place where they can make their business work, where they can be regulated and have legal and regulatory certainty, and it's not a bad place to live either.
All right. Thank you so much for coming. We hope to have you again soon.
Hope to be back.
And that's it. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.